Hello, Perrysburg residents. I've got a different kind of an episode today. My audience that I'm specifically talking to is Perrysburg authors or local authors here in Northwest Ohio. So, if you have written a book and you want to narrate it yourself, this episode's for you. I know what it's like to write a book and want to narrate the audiobook myself. I have done exactly that right here in Perrysburg. Welcome to the Perrysburg Podcast, episode 151. I'm your host, Perrysburg resident and author Kim Newlove. The Perrysburg Podcast is a resource for Perrysburg residents. We talk about what's in Perrysburg and why people like to live here. Our website is perrysburgpodcast.com. Today, I am sharing audiobook narration tips for other local authors. If you're a local author, you need to listen to this episode. And you'll want to stick around until the very end because I will share a list of local and not so local recording studios that may be able to help you record your audiobook if you don't want to do it all yourself. Now, if you plan to hire a voice actor to narrate your audiobook, or your publisher, if you have a publisher and they plan to hire a voice actor, or if you plan to roll the dice and let AI do the job for you, this episode may not be for you, but you're welcome to listen anyway. After all, making informed decisions is a great way to make better decisions. Let's get started. I'm excited about this episode. Let's say you're a local author, and congratulations on publishing, by the way. But now you want to narrate the audiobook yourself. You might be thinking, I'll just buy a microphone and do it myself. How hard can it be? I've heard those remarks from many an author, let me tell you. Rhetorical though that question may be, narrating an audiobook is actually harder than it looks. But if you truly do want to do it on your own, you can do it. If I can do it, you can do it. You can buy or borrow a microphone. You can learn how to use audio engineering software, and you can do it yourself. The Samson Q to U, so that's Samson, Samson, the letter Q, the number 2, and the letter U. Samson Q to U microphone is a decent microphone for under $100. I use it for podcasting all the time. Right now, I'm using a Shure SM7B, but I would not necessarily recommend that for audiobook production. It's expensive. You need an audio interface, a cloud lifter, and a little bit of knowledge of how to use this microphone. But, anyways, if you want something for under $100, the Samson Q2U microphone could help you do the job. Or if you want to do it for free, if you want a free microphone, the Way Public Library has the Beyond Books section, and you can borrow the Fine USB microphone from the Way Public Library. As far as recording software, you could try GarageBand or Audacity. GarageBand comes with most Mac computers, and Audacity is a free program you can download from the internet. Professional narrators use it all the time. It could be right for you. Just remember that audiobook narration is harder than it looks. It's not just reading, there's also audio engineering. Now, apart from setting the expectation that audiobook narration is harder than it looks, I'd like to set some other realistic expectations about narrating an audiobook. Planning is key. Plan before you narrate. Audiobooks take days, not hours, to complete. Give yourself plenty of time to complete your audiobook project. And then your goals should be giving an excellent performance and earning a 5-star review from your audience. After all, 5 out of 5 stars is the best. The listener experience is important. They're going to be judging you and they're going to be rating and reviewing you. I'd also like to add a famous Venn diagram to your expectations. I can't help having a little bit of a laugh in my voice because I love this Venn diagram. When it comes to audiobooks, you can have 2 out of 3: good, fast, or cheap. You can have 2, the third one's not going to happen. If the third one happens, you are a unicorn of a first timer audiobook narrator. I want to meet you and buy your book. But, anyways, back to the Venn diagram. You can create a good audiobook fast if you're experienced or if you get help. It won't be cheap, though. You can create an audiobook fast and cheap if you do it yourself without experience, but it may not be any good. And you can create a good audiobook cheap, but it usually takes significant time and effort. I hope all that makes sense. If you can't visualize this as you're listening, look up the good, fast, cheap Venn diagram, VENN, Venn diagram, to see what I mean. It's one of those visuals where there's three overlapping circles. And again, if you're that rare unicorn type person and you can narrate your first audiobook good, fast, and cheap with zero experience, oh man, I want to meet you and I want to listen to your audiobook. You are a rare individual indeed. I'm trying to keep it real with you and also make this a little bit fun. I hope you're enjoying all these comparisons, expectations, etc. But back to my outline here. If you do want to narrate your book yourself and you have zero experience with narrating and audio engineering, I recommend you get help at a minimum. I recommend you rent a studio and hire an audio engineer to help you record, edit, and produce your audio files so that they meet specifications, also known as audiobook publishing specifications. As you probably know, audiobooks are a growing industry with professional quality standards. If you want to narrate your own audiobook, it's worth learning the craft or working with experienced professionals. I think those are sound words of advice. So I'm in your corner. I'm rooting for you. But I also want you to know that if you want to narrate the book yourself and you don't have any experience with narrating or engineering, you should consider getting some help. How do I know about all this? You're probably wondering at this point. Before I share my tips about audiobook narration, I'd like to share why you should listen to me. I have trained with an audiobook narration coach. His name is Sean Pratt. That's Sean, Sean Pratt. I learned audio engineering from a professional named Don Barnes. That's Barns, Don Barnes. And I've narrated books for other authors. I've narrated my own audiobook, and I have helped other authors publish their audiobooks. They've all been either pharmacists or nurses. I typically work with healthcare professionals. All right, that's a little bit about me and why you should listen to me. Now, let's get into the audiobook narration tips. Here's tip number one: confirm that you own the rights to the audiobook before you get started. Once upon a time, I narrated an audiobook for a pharmacist author whose publisher owned the audiobook rights. We had to go through the publisher to publish the audiobook. The publisher, of course, approved, and we ended up making the audiobook, but we did have to upload the files on the publisher's ACX account. ACX stands for Audiobook Creation Exchange. That's a website that connects authors and narrators or publishers and narrators, and the books that we create go up for sale on Amazon, Audible, and iTunes. The bottom line is you should own the audiobook rights before you go through the trouble of narrating the audiobook. Tip number two: if you want to narrate the book yourself, get a little training so you sound conversational and relaxed. You don't want to sound like you're reading, even if you are reading. And I'm reading a lot of this because I have a list. I do not have this memorized. But, anyways, get a little training. I got training. My audiobook narration coach, Sean Pratt, again, it's Sean, Sean Pratt, helped me improve my narration skills over time. We had 14 lessons over the course of just a little over a year. And one of the things that I had to work on was sounding relaxed and conversational. I needed to learn to say things like I was talking to somebody at a party instead of reading directly from a book. I hope that makes sense to you. So, your narrating voice sounds different from your conversational voice. And if it doesn't, if you sound conversational reading for extended periods of time with an audiobook, you're going to be fine. But I had a problem with it. There was a gap between my conversational voice and my narration voice. So, my audiobook narration coach, Sean Pratt, had me do something called the gap exercise. The gap exercise helped me close the gap between my conversational voice and my narrating voice so that I could sound more conversational as a narrator, a nonfiction audiobook narrator. That is what I am. If you would like to learn more about the gap exercise, go ahead and reach out to me if you want. My email address is kim@perrysburgpodcast.com, or you can actually hear my audiobook narration coach talk about it in episode 83 of the Pharmacist's Voice podcast. That's my other podcast. I'm a pharmacist by training, and my first podcast is called the Pharmacist's Voice podcast. That episode was recorded many years ago before I really developed the sound that you hear today. So, when you listen to that episode, you're probably going to be surprised at what I sounded like 5 or 6 years ago. One more thing about this tip number two, getting a little training. I just want to point out that if you at some point decide to hire a narrator to narrate your audiobook, you're in good company. Even successful authors don't always narrate their own books. I'll give you a good example. Do you know the TV show Shark Tank? There is an investor, Damon John, on that show. Damon wrote a book and it's called The Power of Broke. The Power of Broke. I don't know if you know this about Damon. You may not even know him as an investor on Shark Tank, but he has dyslexia. And dyslexia made narration for audiobooks impossible for him. So I think he made the right decision for both himself and his audience by hiring a professional narrator. And it's kind of interesting at the end of that book, if you're interested, there's actually an interview, I believe, between Damon and the narrator. And they're talking about how Damon has dyslexia and it made it impossible for him to narrate this audiobook. And he actually hired a podcaster, if I remember right, to narrate his audiobook because he liked how he sounded. I thought it was a great conversation. So, anyways, even successful authors don't narrate their own audiobooks. So, either get training so you can give a good performance, or at some point, if you want to hire it out, that's fine, totally valid. All right, let's move on to tips number 3 and 4. They're going to sound similar. Tip number 3 is about pace and consistency, while tip number 4 is about physical stamina and vocal endurance. Now, both involve practicing, which means you'll be recording yourself and listening to the playback to understand what I'm talking about. But let's get into tip number 3 first, and you'll understand what I'm talking about. Here's tip number 3. Find a pace you can keep up with for 60 minutes. You need to sound fairly consistent to the listener over time. Don't start off like a race car and then sound like a sleep story when you get to minute number 60. You should be consistent. Find a pace you can keep up with for an extended period of time. Now, here's an exercise for you. Record yourself narrating 60 minutes and then listen to the playback and then judge yourself. Did you end up with the same pace you started with? Be honest. Did you sound like you had as much energy in minute 60 as you did in minute number 1? How many mistakes did you make? Follow along with the text as you listen to the playback. It's important that you find a pace not only that you can keep up with for an extended period of time, but a pace at which you don't make many mistakes. Find a pace that works for you. I also recommend reading your book all the way through at least twice before recording it. So all of this practice could benefit you, right? You get the reading the book twice out of the way when you practice. Plus, practicing will help with vocal stamina. And vocal stamina is what tip number 4 is all about. So here's tip number 4. Strengthen your vocal stamina. This has to do with physical stamina and vocal endurance. I combine them into one idea. I call it vocal stamina. And I did not invent that term, I just use it. At this time, what I'd like to do is compare vocal stamina to marathon running. There are runners, lots of runners here in Perrysburg, and a lot of them run short distances, like a 5K. They don't necessarily have the stamina to run a marathon, and certainly not every day. When the runners around here run approximately a 5K, they have a certain pace. Let's just say it's like an 8-minute mile. Now, if you put a 5K runner into a marathon, can they keep up an 8-minute mile pace for an entire marathon distance? Likely not. But if those 5K runners trained to run marathons, they would become marathon runners and possibly run at that 5K pace, that 8-minute mile pace. I hope you follow that example. So I'm going to compare that to audiobook narration. When you practice narrating your audiobook, your vocal stamina will improve. Otherwise, just like it's possible to start a marathon too fast and then struggle to finish, you're probably walking or crawling to the finish, the same can happen with narrating your audiobook. You can't run a marathon and certainly not at a 5K pace unless you build your stamina. And you can't narrate your entire audiobook in one day unless you have the vocal stamina to do it. I hope that makes sense. What I propose is that you record yourself. You got to practice. Record yourself reading out loud for up to 60 minutes. You can be working on your pacing at the same time. You can be checking for mistakes too. And then work your way up if needed. Practice will help you discover how long you can narrate while maintaining your energy, pace, and vocal quality. So when you listen to the playback, there's a lot of things you can evaluate. Pace, yes. How many mistakes did you make? How about your vocal quality? Were you smooth, consistent volume, and kind of sound like you're the same distance from the microphone? Or did your voice get raspy, quiet, and distorted? A lot of people migrate to the microphone. So right now, my lips are touching the microphone. Or sometimes when they get tired, they migrate away from the microphone. See how quiet I am right now? Quiet by comparison. So just notice, what are your hangups as you narrate with pacing, mistakes, vocal quality? Evaluate yourself. Practice, practice, practice. Be aware of your vocal stamina. Oh, the irony. I just took a quick break because I've been talking for a good 15 minutes and I needed a break. The next tip is tip number 5: take breaks, breathe, drink some water, and sit quietly as needed. It's so ironic. I just did that. Anyways, we just talked about practice, pace, stamina, mistakes, etc. I would say that, listen, I don't talk for 2 hours straight when I'm narrating an audiobook, even if I get 2 hours of uninterrupted time to narrate. But listen, when I do, when I get 2 hours, I take breaks, probably every 15 minutes or so. I sip some water. I sit quietly. I focus on my breathing, in and out 5 to 10 times. I look ahead in my book to see what's coming up and how I'm going to narrate it. Do I have any notes as a narrator? Notes about anything, pronunciations, emotional points, whatever. I recommend that you take breaks too. Now, if you end up renting studio space and hiring an engineer, you're going to feel like you need to use all that time to narrate. But I do recommend you practice and know yourself. Know how much rest your body needs before you can put in another 15, 30, or 60 minutes. Listen, a recovery period may be needed, so I'm setting that expectation. Take those breaks so that your voice can perform at the same level at the end as it did in the beginning. So aim to have a consistent performance throughout the entire book. Tip number 6 is a very right brained tip to give. Tip number 6 is make a production checklist. I make a production checklist with every book I record, every audiobook. I recommend that you make a production checklist for yourself too. What I do is, if you can imagine a piece of paper and it's numbered vertically from 1 to 10, for example, the first line is the opening credits, the second line is the introduction, then the next line is chapter 1, followed by chapter 2, and so on until you get to the last chapter, which is the closing credits. So you start with opening credits and you end with closing credits. Now, if you plan to distribute your book using Amazon.com, Audible, and iTunes, ACX, the Audiobook Creation Exchange, will likely give you a script for the opening and closing credits. I realize that in your printed physical book or your ebook, there are not opening and closing credits. And you're probably wondering, well, what the heck do I say? ACX will tell you. If you're going through a different distributor, that is up to the distributor to either give you a script or you're going to have to figure it out yourself. Also, at this point, you may be wondering, which sections of my book do I record anyway? I've got a dedication and I've got a preface and, all these things. Well, what I'd like to do is refer you to a resource. It's a website and it's called Narrator's Roadmap. There's no apostrophe S, it's just Narrator's Roadmap. You can find it at narratorsroadmap.com. On that website, narratorsroadmap.com, you will find a list of sections to record. You will have to poke around the website to find it. It's not on the first page, not on the landing page. For example, when you get to the list of sections to record part of the website, you will find that the table of contents is not typically recorded. So if you have a long table of contents and you're wondering, oh my gosh, do I have to narrate this? The answer is no. If you have any questions about any other sections, again, go to narratorsroadmap.com and look at the list of sections to record, and that will help you with your production checklist. We're moving on to tip number 7. Prepare your manuscript before you record. Note how you're going to say difficult to pronounce names and words, lists, contractions, punctuation, and more before you record. One of the things you may not have thought of is, how the heck am I going to turn pages without making page turning sounds? This applies if you have a printed book or a manuscript, of course. So part of prepping is either practicing that or finding a way around it. And I'll tell you how I get around all those page turning sounds. I don't read from a physical printed book or a manuscript that's printed on computer pages. I download a copy of the book via PDF onto my iPad. So I download a PDF of the manuscript onto my iPad, and then I use something called the markup feature on the iPad to make notes. Now you're probably wondering, do you hold the iPad in your hands or what do you do with it? Well, I either put the iPad on a music stand in my recording space and read off the iPad, or I have my microphone on a small desk right now, and I have a small stand that I can use, and I just put my iPad on it. Not a music stand, a different kind of a stand. Now that I have a big old MacBook Pro with a huge screen, I am actually tempted to read off the screen when I narrate my next audiobook. Time will tell. I mentioned the markup feature, so let's talk about that. What do you mark up on your manuscript, you might be wondering? Lots of things is the answer. One of the examples that I have written here in my outline is you would mark up hard to pronounce words. Anything that's hard to say, you don't want your brain trying to figure out as you're reading it because you'll stumble, you'll make a mistake, and you'll have to do it again. And that's just annoying. As a narrator, when I'm narrating stuff for other people, I'm typically working with women pharmacist authors. These are women pharmacists who have written books. And I have had to say anything from oophorectomy to amitriptyline. An oophorectomy is the surgical removal of an ovary, a single ovary, and amitriptyline is a tricyclic antidepressant. But things that you may have to say may be a last name, or the name of a company, or the name of a city that trips you up. I looked at the names of some of the most hard to pronounce cities in the whole entire country, and one of them was Schenectady, New York. If you have to say something that trips you up, research the pronunciations. If it's a last name, ask the person how to say their last name. If you don't have access to the person, watch a YouTube video in which the person says their own last name, or maybe listen to a podcast where they say their own last name. If it's a city name, you can call the library in the town whose name you struggle with, talk to a librarian, and ask him or her how to say the name of the city. There are ways to research pronunciations. What do you do once you hear the pronunciation? Well, what I recommend you do is you mark up your script. Break the word down into syllables, indicate which syllable or syllables to emphasize, and write that broken down word that's in your own words into the script, the manuscript, so you don't look at it when you come across it while narrating and question yourself and wonder, oh my gosh, am I remembering this correctly? Breaking things down and writing them into a script is my own personal coping mechanism for saying big words. And it works for me. I hope it works for you as well. If you can't tell, tip number 7 is a long tip. We're going to talk about other things to mark up in your manuscript. I'll start with lists. There's a lot of different topics. Lists is the next one that I want to talk about. Let's say you have a numbered list and you're the author, right? You could say, number 1 is this, number 2 is that, and so on. Or you could improvise just a little bit and say, for example, I have a 5 item list. My list is the Great Lakes. So I have a 5 item list of the Great Lakes right here. It's Huron, Ontario, Michigan, Erie, and Superior. Or do you like it better as I have a list of the Great Lakes? 1 is Huron, 2 is Ontario, 3 is Michigan, 4 is Erie, and 5 is Superior. You'll just have to see what sits right with you. I prefer the first way where I say I have a 5 item list of the Great Lakes here. It's Huron, Ontario, Michigan, Erie, and Superior. It's just more concise and fewer words. And if you didn't notice, when you say a list, you want to have some vocal variety so people know, okay, we're at the beginning. Huron, Ontario, Michigan, Erie, and Superior. There's a little bit of vocal variety up and down. You want the listener to understand that this is a list and I'm about to get to the end of it. Also, when you read a list, depending on what you're talking about, some lists end with the word and some lists end with the word or. Erie and Superior. Or maybe the list is like, what's your favorite lake? Is it Huron, Ontario, Michigan, Erie, or Superior? It just depends on what the list is about. The context matters. The point of this is we're talking about marking stuff up, right? So think of how you'll end your list before you record because the listener won't even realize that you're giving a list unless you mention it or you say it in a certain way so that they understand that you're at the end of a list. Give them a clue that it's a list and we're about to come to the end by saying and or. I think you get it. So give your list some thought before you narrate it so it comes out the way you want it to. The listener experience is important. Now, as a narrator for other authors, all of these little details are part of the planning conversations that I have with my clients so I get it right the first time. Guessing is not an option. You have to satisfy the client. You have to make sure the client is getting what they want. Attention to detail matters, and the listener experience is so important. You always want the listener to clearly understand what it is that you're saying. Other things to consider marking up on your manuscript are contractions and punctuation. I know this sounds like small potatoes, but I recommend that you think about it ahead of time before you narrate and mark it up on your manuscript. If you are a conversational person, for example, and you prefer to use contractions, mark them up in your script so when you see it, you don't accidentally say, I am instead of I'm. If you can do this on the fly, good for you. But I kind of like to mark them up myself. I'm sounds less stiff and more conversational than I am. So just think about how you talk in real life and mark up your script accordingly. Your brain will not necessarily do this for you, especially if you're a first timer. As for marking up punctuation, my kryptonite is the slash. Am I supposed to say the word slash? Am I supposed to say and? Am I supposed to say or? I'll tell you, I got to make a note about it or I'm going to trip up on it when I come across it in real time. Whether I'm narrating for somebody else or for myself, I like to think about what I'm going to say before I have to say it. Exclamation points and ellipses trip me up too. So In my world, they need a notation in my manuscripts. Emotions are really hard for me to read on the fly when I'm under pressure recording something. So, what I like to do is decide in advance. Am I excited about what I'm saying? Is that why there's an exclamation point? Or am I frustrated? Am I angry about this because there's an exclamation point? What is the emotional point? Honestly, I got to think about it because when I'm under the gun narrating and I'm being recorded, I don't always know. So I like to either add a note, use a word, or I like to label emotions with emojis. If there's a rant in your book and you want it to sound like a rant, make sure you plan ahead. Make notes about emotional points. As for ellipses, am I supposed to pause? Or is this where I'm adding some vocal tension? Ellipses can be tricky. If you use them in your own writing and you're going to be narrating, just think about, what does this ellipse mean? Am I supposed to pause or vocal tension? Think about it. There are risks associated with not making notes before you press record. You risk sounding like you're reading anything, like you're a robot reading a script. You risk losing your personality in the pages. Let your personality come through. Mark up your manuscript. It's a great tip. And one last thing about marking up a manuscript: if your book contains tables, charts, graphs, or images, you need to decide how you're going to handle them in advance of the recording. So decide before you press record. Images can be described quickly, but decide what you're going to say. If you're going to have tables, charts, or graphs, maybe you need an accompanying PDF. And when you come to that part in your book, say, please refer to the accompanying PDF for chart number 1.1. I have narrated books like that, and the author and I did, yes, have to decide before I pressed record what I was going to say. That does it for tip number 7. Now on to tip number 8. Either prepare your recording space or find a recording studio and hire an engineer. I highly recommend you do the latter. Find a recording studio and hire an engineer. The listener experience for your audiobook needs to be excellent. You want that 5-star review. You want the listener to focus on what you're saying instead of how you sound. So, a little caution here: your listener is not going to appreciate your performance if there are lawnmowers, jets, dogs barking, and a TV running in the background. And you're probably not going to pass quality control on audiobook platforms if there are lawnmowers, jets, etc. in the background. So choose your recording space well and avoid those extraneous noises, as we call them. Extraneous noises, lawnmowers, dogs, jets, etc. You do not want to have to record all or some of your book a second time. Words of caution. Now, if you go the route of renting a studio and hiring an engineer, you're kind of on easy street. But I would still check out the studio yourself. You'll get amazing audio quality. You'll get a professional engineer who makes it look easy. They know how to record, edit, and produce your audio files like child's play. They're so good. But again, check out the studio yourself. If you're claustrophobic, do you feel comfortable in their recording space? In my experience, some recording booths can feel kind of small. If you're claustrophobic, go there yourself. When you go to the recording studio, think about, do you prefer to sit when you narrate, or do you need a comfortable chair to sit in? If the recording studio has a chair, is it the type of chair that you like to sit in? I like the type of chair that pulls up to a desk because I'm short, and when I sit on a bar stool, for example, my legs don't necessarily feel comfortable on that little ring that's around the bar stool. So, see if the studio has a chair that you feel comfortable sitting in for several hours, or maybe ask if you can bring your own chair. Is there enough light for your needs? Maybe you wear bifocals like me and you need lots of light. Right now, I have an outline that I'm kind of reading from. It's on my MacBook Pro, and I've got the light up pretty high, and I am wearing my bifocals. If you wear bifocals and you need lots of light, just make sure the studio has it. If you're reading off of a paper copy or an iPad and you want to be hands free, Does the recording space have a music stand for your script, or do they have a desk with an iPad stand? Take a look, think through it. Moving on, other things to check out at the studio are how it smells. How does the studio smell? Some studios also record musicians. Some musicians may be smokers, or maybe their instrument cases absorb smells and they rub off on the studio. If you have asthma or a strong sense of smell and you can't handle certain smells, know about the space, visit it before you rent it. Apart from the space itself, tip number 8 mentions hiring an audio engineer. Audio engineers are true pros, they make it look easy, and a pro can really help you get a great sound and produce your audio files super efficiently. Again, they make it look easy. They're amazing. I highly recommend that you meet the engineer yourself, the engineer who will be recording, editing, and producing your audio files. Confirm that they have the experience needed to record an audiobook. Part of recording audiobooks includes using punch and roll. Punch and roll is a skill that means they can punch into a recording where there's a mistake and roll over the mistakes when you make them. And also talk to the engineer about following along and stopping you when you make a mistake or coaching you if you sound like you need a break. Narrating is different from having a conversation. The stamina that you have for having a conversation for 2 hours is way different than the stamina needed for narrating an audiobook. One other thing about the audio engineer when you meet them, show them the audiobook platform's specifications. Literally have it on a piece of paper, show it to them, and ask them if they can meet those specifications. A couple other questions you may want to ask are, how much do you charge? And this is my deadline. Can you meet it? So think about, do you have a budget? Do you have a deadline? Discuss those with the audio engineer who's going to be recording, editing, and producing your files. There's a lot to think about. There's a lot to think through, even if you plan to rent a space and hire an engineer. Hire the right person for the job. Oh, and speaking of hiring the right studio, as a reminder, I have a list of recording studios in our area and beyond that I'm going to share at the end of this episode. There are 9 studios, so stay tuned to learn more about those studios. We're almost at the end of the list. Tip number 9 is next. That tip is mistakes happen, but they can be fixed. It's called a pickup. Pickup like a pickup truck. Plan to record each sentence that contains a mistake again. The good news is that mistakes are normal and they can be fixed, and your audio engineer, or you, if you're doing it yourself, can insert corrections into the final product. There's some nuance to sounding like you're narrating at the same pace and volume and energy, but it is possible to get those pickups inserted into the final product. By the way, you will likely have several pickups. Professional narrators often have dozens of pickups per book, like 6 to 10 hour audiobook. They're going to have dozens. And it's not because they're not good narrators, it's because they missed something during their research and markup phase, or they innocently misread something. When you practice to get your pacing and your stamina, you will listen to the playback and you'll realize you make mistakes too. It's normal and they can be fixed. A lot of audiobooks are 5 hours or longer, and mistakes are understandable. When it happens to you, just don't take it personally. Even the pros make mistakes. Would you like to hear about my mistakes? I had 14 pickups with my first audiobook. My first audiobook was around 5 hours long. I was told that less than 50 pickups for a book of that length is pretty good for a first timer. I was kind of surprised. I thought 0 should be my number. I really thought, hey, I'm smart. I know how to read. I can do this. But no, I had 14. My audio engineer that I've been working with for mastering my audiobooks for the past 5 years, her name's Julie, always does a great job pointing out my pickups to me having me re record them, and then inserting them into the final product. She's very talented and worth every penny. I'll talk more about Julie later on. That does it for mistakes and pickups. My 10th and final tip is next. Then we'll go over that list of audiobook recording studios. All right, here's tip number 10. Hire a coach or a consultant like me to hold your hand. Whether you do it yourself, hire a narrator, or rent a studio and hire an engineer, I can tell you what you need to know so you can get the job done right. There is no shame in getting training or help before you do something that is important to you. And that's it for tip number 10. I just took a quick break. I'm back at it. And at this time, I'm going to close out this episode with a list of recording studios that may be able to help you with your audiobook. It is up to you to vet them, of course. Remember to ask them about their experience with audiobooks and meeting specs. Find out their availability. Find out if you can go take a tour of the studio. All that stuff. So vet your studio and your engineer. And as I go through this list, I will mention the name of the place, the city, and when possible, the name of the contact person. There are 9 studios on this list, and they're all in the show notes. They're all listed in the show notes. First up is Level 2 Audio in Perrysburg. That's the word level, the number 2, and the word audio. Level 2 Audio. I had a good experience recording there in 2020. I did my medical narration demo there. Mark Reiter is your contact person. That's Mark Reiter, Reiter, Reiter. Number 2 is just across the Maumee River. It's Stone Soup in Maumee. Your contact person is Eric Sills, Sills, Sills. Number 3 on the list is Firefly Studios on Door Street in Toledo. They specialize in music recording, but you can also record an audiobook there. My contact person is Brett Dennison. Number 4 is Bigfoot Studios in Waterville. They also specialize in music recording, and my contact person there is Travis Guyman. Travis Guyman. You can contact him to discuss your project. Number 5 is Audio Flare Recording Studio, LLC, and that's at the Toledo School for the Arts in Toledo, Ohio. Your contact person will be Christopher Stoll. Christopher Stoll, Stoll, Stoll. Number 6 is Roar Studio Productions. Roar is spelled Roar, Roar, Roar Studio Productions. That is located inside Mays and Associates Limited in Sylvania, Ohio. If you would like to narrate your audiobook there, just fill out their contact form on the website and indicate your interest in narrating your audiobook. I happened to record a podcast interview there with the host of the Pin Leader podcast, Dr. Shaanda Gore, just last week. It's a nice space, and I felt comfortable there. The last 3 studios are out of state. Let's go through them one at a time. Number 7 is Whole Story Studio in West Palm Beach, Florida. Whole is spelled Whole, Whole. Whole Story Studio. This is Julie Walther's studio. Julie is my audio engineer who's in Florida, and we just communicate our files, very large audio files, via Dropbox. I send her my clean, finished audio, and she examines it for errors, and she masters it when the whole entire project is complete so that it meets specifications for ACX, and our relationship works great. You might want to check out the cost calculator on her website, wholestorystudio.com, so you can see approximately how much it will cost you to produce your audiobook on site with Julie. If you would like to work with Julie in the capacity that I do, where I'm sending her audio files in the last stages of the audiobook creation process, then you can reach out to her directly and ask her how that would work. Number 8 on my list is Audivita. Audivita is in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and you spell Audivita Audivita. Audivita. Believe it or not, Audivita can remotely record your book for you, edit the files, and then produce the audiobook files for you. This means that you get to narrate your audiobook from the comfort of your home in your jammies if you want. So you get to be at home when you narrate your audiobook. Some people this really appeals to. David Wolf or Jay Spang are my contacts there at Audivita. I am not compensated in any way for talking about this business. And if you would like to hear from David Wolf, one of my contact people, I recorded a podcast interview with David a few years back for the Pharmacist's Voice podcast, which is my other podcast. There is a link to that interview, which is a YouTube video in the show notes. So if you want to watch me talking to David Wolf, check the show notes for the link. And the ninth and final studio on my list is Soundscape in Royal Oak, Michigan. Tim Smith and Christina Mossine are my contacts there. Soundscape in Royal Oak is actually an audio engineering school during the week, so that's Monday through Friday. And then they're only available to record audiobooks on the weekends. That's Friday evenings through Sunday afternoons. I have never recorded at Soundscape in Royal Oak, Michigan, and I've never been there, but I have super high expectations about their sound quality and their ability to produce audio files for audiobooks since they teach audio engineering. They also record in large chunks of time, according to Christina, like 2 to 4 hours. So if you've got the chops, if you've got the vocal stamina for long stretches of narration, consider Soundscape. That's it for my list of recording studios. Again, vet the studio before you book your time. If you remember nothing else from today's episode, I have 3 key takeaways. Number 1, plan before you narrate. Number 2, practice before you record. And 3, get help when you need it. I really hope that this episode was helpful to you, and I hope you'll also feel like it was a balance of good news and bad news. It's totally possible to narrate your audiobook right here in Perrysburg or in the greater Toledo area. Just plan before you narrate. You can do it. Congratulations again on writing and publishing your book, and good luck with your audiobook. Thank you for listening to the Perrysburg Podcast, episode 151. The show notes are on perrysburgpodcast.com. I have a lot of links for you today, including the recording studios that I just mentioned, all 9 of them. I have a link to my book, my email address, a summary of my audiobook narration tips, podcast episodes about audiobook narration on my other podcast, which is called the Pharmacist's Voice podcast, and more. Everything you need is on perrysburgpodcast.com. If you know someone who needs to hear this episode or is considering narrating their own audiobook and needs some tips, please share this episode with them. And if you like this podcast, come on back. We've got more coming up here in 2026. Subscribe to or follow the Perrysburg Podcast on your favorite podcast app or on YouTube so you never miss an episode. Go ahead and sign up for my newsletter. I will email you every time a new episode comes out. The sign up is in the show notes and also on the website. Thanks so much for listening today. This has been so fun to put together. I hope it really helps you, and I'll talk to you next week.